Hey guys. So I'm going to be doing a Bible reading on the book of Esdras, which is part of the Deuterocanonical, which I'll be reading from the New Revised Standard version with Apocrypha. So here we go, guys. So there are only 9 chapters in Esdras. I'm not sure how long they have. I haven't opened any of these up. They look pretty long. So we might not get through all 9 today, but we'll see. Okay, so first Esdras chapter 1. What just happened? I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay. Um, Josiah kept the Passover to his Lord in Jerusalem. He killed the Passover lamb on the 14th day of the first month. Having placed the priests according to their divisions, arrayed in their vestments in the temple of the Lord, he told the Levites, the temple servants of Israel, that they should sanctify themselves to the Lord and put the holy ark of the Lord in the house that King Solomon, son of David, had built. And he said, "You need no longer carry it on your shoulders. Now worship the Lord your God and serve his people Israel. Prepare yourselves by your families and kindred. In accordance with the directions of King David of Israel and the magnificence of his son Solomon, stand in order in the temple according to the groupings of the ancestral houses of you Levites, who minister before your kindred, the people of Israel, and kill the Passover lamb and prepare the sacrifices for your kindred, and keep the Passover according to the commandment of the Lord that was given to Moses." To the people who were present, Josiah gave 30,000 lambs and kids and 3,000 calves. These were given from the king's possessions as he promised to the people and the priests and Levites. Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Jehiel, the chief officers of the temple, gave to the priests for the Passover 2,600 sheep and 300 calves. And Jeconiah and Shemaiah and his brother Nathanael and Hashabiah and Ochiel and Joram, captains over thousands, gave the Levites for the Passover 5,000 sheep and 700 calves. This is what took place. The priests and Levites, having the unleavened bread, stood in proper order according to kindred, and the grouping of the ancestral houses before the people to make the offering to the Lord as it is written in the book of Moses. This they did in the morning. They roasted the Passover lamb with fire as required, and they boiled the sacrifices in bronze pots and cauldrons with a pleasing odor, and carried them to all the people. Afterward, they prepared the Passover for themselves and for their kindred, the priests, the sons of Aaron, because the priests were offering the fat until nightfall. So the Levites prepared it for themselves and for their kindred, the priests, the sons of Aaron. The temple singers, the sons of Asaph, were in their place according to the arrangement made by David, and also Asaph, Zechariah, and Edinus, who represented the king. The gatekeepers were at each gate. No one needed to interrupt his daily duties. For their kindred, the Levites prepared the Passover for them. So the kings that had to do with the sacrifices to the Lord were accomplished that day. The Passover was kept, and the sacrifices were offered on the altar of the Lord according to the command of King Josiah. And the people of Israel who were present at that time kept the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread 7 days. No Passover like it had been kept in Israel since the times of the prophet Samuel. None of the kings of Israel had kept such a Passover as was kept by Josiah and the priests and Levites and the people of Judah and all of Israel who were living in Jerusalem. In the 18th year of the reign of Josiah, this Passover was kept, and the deeds of Josiah were upright in the sight of the Lord, for his heart was full of godliness. In ancient times, the events of his reign have been recorded concerning those who signed and acted wickedly toward the Lord beyond any other people or kingdom, and how they grieved the Lord deeply, so that the words of the Lord fell upon Israel. After all these acts of Josiah, it happened that Pharaoh, king of Egypt, went to make war in Carchemish of the on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out against him. And the king of Egypt sent word to him, saying, "What have we to do with each other, O king of Judah? I was not sent against you by the Lord God, for my war is at the Euphrates, and now the Lord is with me. The Lord is with me, urging me on. Stand aside and do not oppose the Lord." Josiah, however, did not turn back to his chariot, but tried to fight with him, and did not heed the words of the prophet Jeremiah from the mouth of the Lord. He joined battle with him in the plain of Megiddo, and the commanders came down against King Josiah. The king said to his servants, "Take me away from the battle, for I am weak." And immediately his servants took him out of the line of battle. He got into his second chariot, and after he was brought back to Jerusalem, he died and was buried in the tomb of his ancestors. In all Judea, they mourned for Josiah. The prophet Jeremiah lamented for Josiah, and the principal men with the women have made lamentation for him to this day. It was ordained that this should always be done throughout the whole nation of Israel. These things are written in the book of the histories of the kings of Judah, in every one of the acts of Josiah and his splendor, and his understanding of the law of the Lord, and the things that he had done before, and these that are now told are recorded in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. The men of the nation took Jeconiah, son of Josiah, who was 23 years old, and made him king in succession to his father Josiah. He reigned 3 months in Judah and Jerusalem. Then the king of Egypt deposed from him reigning in Jerusalem, and fined the nation 100 talents of silver and 1 talent of gold. The king of Egypt made his brother Joachim king of Judah and Jerusalem. Joachim put the nobles in prison and seized his brother Zarius and brought him back from Egypt. Joachim was 25 years old when he began to reign in Judea, Judea, and Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came up against him. He bound him with a chain of bronze and took him away to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also took some holy vessels of the Lord and carried them away and stored them in his temple in Babylon. But the things that are reported about Jehoiakim and his uncleanliness and impiety are written in the annals of the kings. His son Joachim became king in his place. When he was made king, he was 18 years old. And he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. A year later, Nebuchadnezzar sent and removed him to Babylon with the holy vessels of the Lord, and made Zedekiah king of Judea and Jerusalem. Zedekiah was 21 years old, and he reigned 11 years. He also did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and did not heed the words that were spoken by the prophet Jeremiah from the mouth of the Lord. Although King Nebuchadnezzar had made him swear by the name of the Lord, he broke his oath and rebelled. He stiffened his neck and hardened his heart and transgressed the laws of the Lord, the God of Israel. Even the leaders of the people and of the priests committed many acts of sacrilege and lawlessness beyond all the unclean deeds of all the nations, and polluted the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem, the temple that God had made holy. The God of their ancestors sent his messenger to call them back, because he would have spared them and his dwelling place. But they mocked his messengers, and whenever the Lord spoke, they scoffed at his prophets, until in his anger against his people, because of their ungodly acts, he gave command to bring against them the kings of the Chaldeans. These killed their young men with the sword around their holy temple, and did not spare young man or young woman, old man, child, for he gave them all into their hands. They took all the holy vessels of the Lord, great and small, the treasure chests of the Lord, and the royal stores, and carried them away to Babylon. They burned the house of the Lord, broke down the walls of Jerusalem, burned their towers with fire, and utterly destroyed all its glorious things. The survivors he led away to Babylon with the sword, and they were servants to him, to his sons, until the Persians began to reign, in fulfillment of the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, saying, "Until the land has enjoyed its Sabbaths, it shall keep Sabbath all the time of its desolation, until the completion of 70 years." Okay, first Esdras chapter 2. In the first year of Cyrus as king of the Persians, so that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of King Cyrus of the Persians, and he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of the Persians, the Lord of Israel, the Lord Most High, has made me king of the world, and he has commanded me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judea. If any of you, therefore, are of his people, may your Lord be with you. Go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judea, and build the house of the Lord of Israel. He is the Lord who dwells in Jerusalem. And let each of you, wherever you may live, be helped by the people of your place with gold and silver, with gifts and with horses and cattle, besides the other things added as votive offerings for the temple of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. Then arose the heads of families of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, and all whose spirit the Lord had stirred to go up to build the house in Jerusalem for the Lord. Their neighbors helped them with everything, with silver and gold, with horses and cattle, and with a very great number of votive offerings from many whose hearts were stirred. King Cyrus also brought out the holy vessels of the Lord that Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem and stored in his temple of idols. When King Cyrus of the Persians brought these out, morning grandpa, he gave them to Mithridates, his treasurer, and by him they were given to Sheshbazzar, the governor of Judea. The number of these was 1,000 gold cups, 1,000 silver cups, 29 silver censers, 30 gold bowls, 2,410 silver bowls, and 1,000 other vessels. All the vessels were handed over, gold and silver, 5,469. And they were carried back to Sheshbazzar with the returning exiles from Babylon to Jerusalem. In the time of King Artaxerxes of the Persians, Bishlam, Mithridates, Tabeel, Rehum, Beltathemus, the scribe Shimshai, and the rest of their associates living in Samaria and other places wrote him the following letter against those who were living in Judea and Jerusalem. To King Artaxerxes, our Lord, your servants, the recorder Rehum, and the scribe Shimshai, and the other members of their council, and the judges of in Syria, and Phoenicia. Let it now be known to our Lord the King that the Jews who came up from you to us have gone to Jerusalem and are building that rebellious and wicked city, repairing its marketplaces and walls, and laying the foundations for a temple. Now, if this city is built and the walls finished, they will not only refuse to pay tribute, but will even resist kings. Since the building of the temple is now going on, we think it best not to neglect such a matter.
You get in that bathroom and get your stuff out of there because now Grandpa's coming. He wants that bathroom, and Mike's gonna want a shower and stuff in there. What are you talking about?
I don't know, but I'm in the middle of a YouTube thing, Grandma, right now. So
Okay.
Okay. Now, when the city is built and well is finished, they will not only refuse to pay tribute, but will even resist kings. Since the building of the temple is now going on, we think it best not to neglect such a matter, but to speak to our Lord the King in order that, if it seems good to you, search may be made in the records of your ancestors. You will find in the annals what has been written about them, and will learn that this city was rebellious, troubling both kings and other cities, and that the Jews were rebels and kept setting up blockades in it from of old. That is why the city was laid waste. Therefore, we now make known to you, O Lord and King, that if the city is built and its walls finished, you will no longer have access to Coelesyria and Phoenicia. Then the king, in reply to the recorder Rehum, Beltathemus, the scribe Shimshai, and the others associated with them and living in Samaria and Syria and Phoenicia, wrote as follows: I have read the letter that you sent me, so I ordered search to be made, and it has been found that this city from of old has fought against kings, that the people in it were given to rebellion and war, and that mighty and cruel kings ruled in Jerusalem and exacted tribute from Coelesyria and Phoenicia. Therefore, I have now issued orders to prevent these people from building the city and to take care that nothing more be done, and that such wicked proceedings go no further to the annoyance of kings. Then, when the letter from King Artaxerxes was read, Rehum and the scribe Shimshai and their associates went quickly to Jerusalem.
Morning, ladies.
Morning, Grandpa, with cavalry and a large number of armed troops, and began to hinder the buildings. And the building of the temple in Jerusalem stopped until the second year of the reign of King Darius of the Persians. Okay. First Esdras 3. Chapter 3. Now King Darius gave a great banquet. What are we at for time? Okay, I'll probably finish at 3, guys. Hi, whoever's watching.
You don't want to take a shower?
Now King Darius gave a great banquet for all that were under him, all that were born in his house, and all the nobles of Media and Persia, and all the satraps and generals and governors that were under him, and the 127 satrapies from India to Ethiopia. They ate and drank, and when they were satisfied, they went away. And King Darius went to his bedroom. He went to sleep, but woke up again. Then the 3 young men of the bodyguard who kept guard over the person of the king said to one another, "Let each of us state what one thing is strongest, and to the one whose statement seems wisest, King Darius will give rich gifts and great honors of victory. He shall be clothed in purple and drink from gold cups, and sleep on a gold bed, and have a chariot with gold bridles, and a turban of fine linen, and a necklace around his neck. And because of his wisdom, he shall sit next to Darius, and shall be called kinsman of Darius." Then each wrote his own statement, and they sealed them up and put them under the pillow of King Darius, and said, "When the king wakes, they will give him the writing. And to the one whose statement the king and the 3 nobles of Persia judge to be wisest, the victory shall be given according to what is written." The first wrote, "Wine is strongest." The second wrote, "The king is strongest." The third wrote, "Women are strongest, but above all things, truth is victor." When the king awoke, they took the writing and gave it to him, and he read it. Then he sent and summoned all the nobles of Persia and Media, and the satraps and generals and governors and prefects. And he took his seat in the council chamber, and the writing was read in their presence. He said, "Call the young men, and they shall explain their statements." So they were summoned and came in. They said to them, "Explain to us what you have written." Then the first, who had spoken of the strength of wine, began and said, "Gentlemen, how is wine the strongest? It leads astray the minds of all who drink it. It makes equal the mind of the king and the orphan, of the slave and of the free, of the poor and the rich. And it turns every thought to feasting and mirth, and forgets all sorrow and debt. It makes all hearts feel rich, forgets kings and satraps, and makes everyone talk in millions. When people drink, they forget to be friendly with friends and kindred, and before long they draw their swords. And when they recover from the wine, they do not remember what they have done. Gentlemen, is not wine the strongest, since it forces people to do these things?" When he had said this, he stopped speaking. Okay, guys, I think we're going to try to do 5 chapters. Okay, so we're in Esdras chapter 4. Then the second, who had spoken of the strength of the king, began to speak. "Gentlemen, are not men strongest who rule over land and sea and all that is in them? But the king is stronger. He is their lord and master, and whatever he says to them, they obey. If he tells them to make war on one another, they do it. And if he sends them out against the enemy, they go and conquer mountains, walls, and towers. They kill and are killed and do not disobey the king's commands. If they win the victory, they bring everything to the king. Whatever spoil they take, and everything else. Likewise, those who do not serve in the army or make war, but till the soil, whenever they sow and reap, they bring some to the king, and they compel one another to pay taxes to the king. And yet he is only one man. If he tells them to kill, they kill. If he tells them to release, they release. If he tells them to attack, they attack. If he tells them to lay waste, they lay waste. If he tells them to build, they build. If he tells them to cut down, they cut down. If he tells them to plant, they plant. All his people and his armies obey him. Furthermore, he reclines. He eats and drinks and sleeps. But they keep watch around him, and no one may go away to attend his own affairs, nor do they disobey him. Gentlemen, why is not the king the strongest, since he is to be obeyed in this fashion?" And he stopped speaking. Then the third, who had spoken of women and truth, and this was Zerubbabel, began to speak. "Gentlemen, is not the king great, and are not men many, and is not wine strong? Who is it then that rules them, or has the mastery over them? Is it not women? Women gave birth to the king, and to every people that rules over sea and land. For women they came, and women brought up the very men who plant the vineyards from which comes wine. Women makes men's clothes. They bring men glory. Men cannot exist without women. If men gather gold and silver or any other beautiful thing, and then see a woman lovely in appearance and beauty, they let all those things go and gape at her, and with open mouths stare at her, and all prefer her to gold or silver or any other beautiful thing. A man leaves his own father, who brought him up, and his own country, and clings to his wife. With his wife he ends his days, with no thought of his father or his mother or his country. Therefore, you must realize that women rule over you. Do you not labor and toil and bring everything and give it to women? A man takes his sword and goes out to travel and rob and steal and to sail the sea and rivers. He faces lions and he walks in darkness. And when he steals and robs and plunders, he brings it back to the woman he loves. A man loves his wife more than his father or his mother. Many men have lost their minds because of women and have become slaves because of them. Many have perished or stumbled or sinned because of women. And now, do you not believe me? Is not the king great in his power? Do not all lands fear to touch him? Yet I have seen him with Apami, the king's concubine, the daughter of the illustrious Bardicus. She would sit at the king's right hand and take the crown from the king's head and put it on her and slap the king with her left hand. At this, the king would gaze at her with mouth agape. If she smiles at him, he laughs. If she loses her temper with him, he flatters her. So she may be reconciled to him. Gentlemen, why are not women strong, since they do such things? Then the king and the nobles looked at one another, and he began to speak about truth. Gentlemen, are not women strong? The earth is vast, and heaven is high, and the sun is swift in its course, for it makes the circuit of the heavens and returns to its place in one day. Is not the one who does these things great? But truth is great and stronger than all things. The whole earth calls upon truth, and heaven blesses it. All God's works quake and tremble, and with him there is nothing unrighteous. Wine is unrighteous. The king is unrighteous. Women are unrighteous. All human beings are unrighteous. All their works are unrighteous, and all such things. There is no truth in them, and in their unrighteousness they will perish. But truth endures and is strong forever, and lives and prevails forever and ever. With it is no partiality or preference, but it does what is righteous instead of anything that is unrighteous or wicked. Everyone approves its deeds, and there is nothing unrighteous in judgment. To it belongs the strength and the kingship and the power and the majesty of all the ages. Blessed be the God of truth. When he stopped speaking, all the people shouted and said, Great is truth and strongest of all. Then the king said to him, Ask what you wish, even beyond what is written, and we will give it to you, for you have been found to be the wisest. You shall sit next to me and be called my kinsman. Then he said to the king, Remember the vow that you made on the day when you became king to build Jerusalem and to send back all the vessels that were taken from Jerusalem, which Cyrus set apart when he began to destroy Babylon, and vowed to send them back there. You also vowed to build the temple, which the Edomites burned when Judea was laid waste by the Chaldeans. And now, O Lord, the king, this is what I ask and request of you, and this befits your greatness. I pray, therefore, that you fulfill the vow whose. Oh, I just lost it back of my ear. Nope, it's still there. Weird. Okay. The king, I pray, therefore, that you fulfill the vow whose fulfillment you vowed to the king of heaven with your own lips. Then King Darius got up and kissed him and wrote letters for him to all the treasurers and governors and generals and satraps that they should give safe conduct to him and to all who were going up with him to build Jerusalem. And he wrote letters to all the governors in Syria and Phoenicia and to those in Lebanon to bring cedar timber from Lebanon to Jerusalem and to help him build the city. He wrote in behalf of all the Jews who were going up from his kingdom to Judea in the interest of their freedom, that no officer or satrap or governor or treasurer should forcibly enter their doors, that all the country that they would occupy should be theirs without tribute, that the Idumeans should give up the villages of the Jews that they held, that 20 talents a year should be given for the building of the temple until it was completed, and an additional 10 talents a year for burnt offerings to be offered on the altar every day in accordance with the commandment to make 17 offerings, and that all who came from Babylonia to build the city should have their freedom, they and their children and all the priests who came. He wrote also concerning their support and the priests' vestments in which they were to minister. He wrote that the support for the Levites should be provided until the day when the temple would be finished and Jerusalem built. He wrote that land and wages should be provided for all who guarded the city. And he sent back from Babylon all the vessels that Cyrus had set apart, everything that Cyrus had ordered to be done. He also commanded to be done and to be sent to Jerusalem. When the young man went out, he lifted up his face to heaven toward Jerusalem and praised the King of heaven, saying, "From you comes the victory, from you comes wisdom, and yours is the glory. I am your strength. Blessed are you who have given me wisdom. I give you thanks, O Lord of our ancestors." So he took the letters and went to Babylon and told this to all his kindred. And they praised the God of their ancestors because he had given them release and permission to go up and build Jerusalem and the temple that is called by his name. And they feasted with music and rejoicing for 7 days. All right, guys, this will be our last chapter, chapter 5. We're halfway through First Esdras. First Esdras, chapter 5. What?
How far are you going to go with this?
This is my last chapter, and Grandpa's in the bathroom right now, so I can't even go in there. After this, the heads of ancestral houses were chosen to go up, according to their tribes, with their wives and sons and daughters, and their male and female servants and their livestock. And Darius sent with them 1,000 cavalry to take them back to Jerusalem in safety with the music of drums and flutes. All their kindred were making merry, and he made them go up with them. These are the names of the men who went up, according to their ancestral houses in the tribes over their groups. The priests, the descendants of Phinehas, son of Aaron, Jeshua, son of Jozadak, son of Serariah, and Joachim, son of Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, of the house of David, of the lineage of Phares of the tribe of Judah, who spoke wise words before King Darius of the Persians in the 2nd year of his reign, in the month of Nisan, the 1st month. These are the Judeans who came up out of the sojourn in exile, whom King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had carried away to Babylon, and who returned to Jerusalem and the rest of Judea, each to his own town. They came with Zerubbabel and Jeshua, Nehemiah, Sariah, Rasiah, Aeneas, Mordecai, Beelzerus, Asapharas, Reliah, Rehum, and Banan, their leaders. The number of those of the nation and their leaders, the descendants of Parash, 2,172. The descendants of Shephatiah, 472. The descendants of Ariah, 756. The descendants of Pahath, Moab, of the descendants of Jeshua and Joab, 2,812. The descendants of Elam, 1,254. The descendants of Zetu, 945. The descendants of Chorb, 705. The descendants of Bani, 648. The descendants of Babai, 623. The descendants of Asgad, 1,322. The descendants of Adakim, 667. The descendants of Bigvai, 2,066. The descendants of Adin, 454. The descendants of Adar, namely of Hezekiah, 92. The descendants of Kalan and Estas, 67. The descendants of Azuru, 432. The descendants of Anias, 101. The descendants of Aram, the descendants of Bazai, 323. The descendants of Ersapurith, 112. The descendants of Betaris, 3005. The descendants of Bethalamon, 123. Those from Netophi, 55. Those from Anathoth, 158. Those from Bethsmoth, 42. Those from Kiriatharim, 25. Those from Shephiriah in Beeroth, 743. The Chadesans and Amedians, 422. Those from Kirama and Geba, 621. Those from Makalan, 122. Those from Betaleo, 52. The descendants of Niphish, 156. The descendants of the other Kalamalawas and Ono, 725. The descendants of Jerekchus, 345. The descendants of Sinai, 3,330. The priests, the descendants of Jediah, son of Jeshua, of the descendants of Anasib, 972. The descendants of Emer, 1,052. The descendants of Pashur, 1,247. The descendants of Charmi, 1,017. The Levites, the descendants of Jeshua, and Kadmiel, and Banas, and Sudias, 74. The temple singers, the descendants of Asaph, 128. The gatekeepers, the descendants of Shalom, the descendants of Adar, the descendants of Talmon, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Hatita, the descendants of Shabai, in all 139. The temple servants, the descendants of Esau, the descendants of Asupoth, the descendants of Tabaoth, the descendants of Kiros, the descendants of Suah, the descendants of Padon, the descendants of Lebanon, the descendants of Hagabah, the descendants of Akub, the descendants of Utha, the descendants of Kitab, the descendants of Hagab, the descendants of Subai, the descendants of Hana, the descendants of Kathua, the descendants of Gadar. The descendants of Jairus, the descendants of Dyson, the descendants of Noeba, the descendants of Chezib, the descendants of Gezerah, the descendants of Uzzah, the descendants of Phedo, the descendants of Hasarah, the descendants of Basthai, the descendants of Asnah, the descendants of Menai, the descendants of Nephizim, the descendants of Akuf, the descendants of Hakupah, the descendants of Asur, the descendants of Pharakim, the descendants of Basluth, the descendants of Mahida, the descendants of Kutha, the descendants of Chariah, the descendants of Barkos, the descendants of Serar, the descendants of Tamah, the descendants of Naziah, the descendants of Hadifah, the descendants of Solomon's servants, the descendants of Siphioth, the descendants of Peruda, the descendants of Jila, the descendants of Lazan, the descendants of Isdel, the descendants of Shephatiah. Grief. The descendants of Agia, the descendants of Pachareth Hezebaim, the descendants of Zarathi, the descendants of Messiah, the descendants of Gas, the descendants of Adas, the descendants of Subas, the descendants of Ephira, the descendants of Baradis, the descendants of Shaphat, the descendants of Elon. All the temple servants and the descendants of Solomon's servants were 372. The following are those who came up from Talmelah, and Harsha, under the leadership of Cherub, Adon, and Emer. Though they could not prove by their ancestral houses or lineage that they belonged to Israel, the descendants of Deliah, son of Tobiah, and the descendants of Nekoda, 652. Of the priests, the following had assumed the priesthood, but were not found registered: the descendants of Habiah, the descendants of Hakaz, and the descendants of Jadas, who had married Agia, one of the daughters of Barzillai, and was called by his name. When a search was made in the register and the genealogy of these men was not found, they were excluded from serving as priests. And Nehemiah and Athaliah told them not to share in the holy things until a high priest should appear wearing Urim and Thummim. All those of Israel, 12 or more years of age, besides male and female servants, were 42,360. Their male and female servants were 7,337. There were 245 musicians and singers. There were 435 camels and 7,036 horses, 245 mules, and 5,525 donkeys. Some of the heads of families, when they came to the temple of God that is in Jerusalem, vowed that to the best of their ability they would erect the house on its site, and that they would give to the sacred treasury for the work 1,000 minas of gold, 5,000 minas of silver, and 100 priests' vestments. The priests, the Levites, and some of the people settled in Jerusalem and its vicinity, and the temple singers, the gatekeepers, and all Israel in their towns. When the 7th month came and the Israelites were all in their own homes, they gathered with a single purpose in the square before first gate toward the east. Then Joshua, son of Josedek, with his fellow priests, And Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, with his kinsmen, took their places and prepared the altar of the God of Israel to offer burnt offerings upon it, in accordance with the directions in the book of Moses, the man of God. And some joined them from the other peoples of the land, and they erected the altar in its place. For all the peoples of the land were hostile to them and were stronger than they. And they offered sacrifices at the proper times and burnt offerings to the Lord morning and evening. They kept the festival booths as it is commanded in the law and offered the proper sacrifices every day and thereafter the regular offerings and sacrifices on Sabbaths and at new moons and at all the consecrated feasts. And all who had made any vow to God began to offer sacrifices to God from the new moon of the seventh month, though the temple of God was not yet built. They gave money to the masons and the carpenters, and food and drink, and carts to the Sidonians and the Tyrians to bring cedar logs from Lebanon and convey them in rafts to the harbor of Joppa, according to the decree that they had in writing from King Cyrus of the Persians. In the second year after their coming to the temple of God in Jerusalem, in the second month, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Josedek, made a beginning, together with their kindred and the Levitical priests and all who had come back to Jerusalem from exile. And they laid the foundation of the temple of God on the new moon of the second month in the second year after they came to Judea and Jerusalem. They appointed the Levites, who were 20 or more years of age, to have charge of the work of the Lord. And Jeshua arose, and his sons and kindred, and his brother Kadmiel, and the sons of Jeshua, Amadaban, and the sons of Jodah, son of Eliadon, with their sons and kindred, all the Levites pressing forward the work on the house of God with a single purpose. So the builders built the temple of the Lord, and the priests stood arrayed in their vestments with musical instruments and trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals, praising the Lord and blessing him according to the directions of King David of Israel. They sang hymns, giving thanks to the Lord for his goodness and his glory are forever upon all Israel. And all the people sounded trumpets and shouted with great shout, praising the Lord for the erection of the house of the Lord. Some of the Levitical priests and heads of ancestral houses, old men, had seen the former house, came to the building of this one with outcries and loud weeping, while many came with trumpets and a joyful noise, so that the people could not hear the trumpets because of the weeping of the people. For the multitude sounded the trumpets loudly, so that the sound was heard far away. And when the enemies of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin heard it, they came to find out what the sound of the trumpets meant. They learned that those who had returned from exile were building the temple for the Lord of God of Israel. So they approached Zerubbabel and Joshua and the heads of the ancestral houses and said to them, "We will build with you. For we obey your Lord just as you do, and we have been sacrificing to him ever since the days of King Esarhaddon of the Assyrians who brought us here." But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the heads of the ancestral houses in Israel said to them, "You have nothing to do with us in building the house of the Lord our God, for we alone will build it for the Lord of Israel, as Cyrus the king of the Persians has commanded us." But the peoples of the land pressed hard upon those in Judea, cut off their supplies, and hindered their building. And by plots and demagoguery and their risings, they prevented the completion of the building as long as King Cyrus lived. They were kept from building for 2 years until the king reign of Darius. Okay, guys, that's it for Esdras chapter 1 through 6. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you guys later. Bye.